The ship called Endless Dawn had been traveling through space for 3 years when it finally found other life. The crew of 47 humans had left Earth with hope in their hearts and fear in their bones. They did not know what they would find among the stars. They only knew they had to try. When the ship's engines began to fail near a massive space station called Helix, the humans had no choice but to ask for help. The station was enormous. It stretched across the darkness like a metal city floating in nothing. Lights blinked from thousands of windows. Ships of strange shapes moved around it like fish swimming near a reef. Stood at the viewport and watched the station grow larger. He was 34 years old, with tired eyes and hands that knew hard work. Back on Earth, he had been a military engineer. He had built things and broken things and seen too many people die in wars that never seemed to end. He had come to space looking for something different, something peaceful. His sister stood beside him. She was the ship's doctor, 5 years younger than but somehow always seeming older. She had sharp eyes that missed nothing and a tongue that could cut through lies like a knife through paper. "They are not happy to see us," said quietly. Nodded. The communication channels had been cold. The alien voices that answered their distress call spoke with the tone of someone finding an insect in their food. Curious, yes, but not pleased. The Endless Dawn docked at the station's lowest level. The humans stepped out into air that smelled of metal and strange chemicals. Alien guards waited for them. These creatures were massive, standing 3 meters tall with bodies covered in black shells like armor. Their eyes were many and gleaming. Their mouths clicked when they spoke. These were the warriors, law-keepers. They looked at the humans the way a wolf might look at rabbits. "Soft species," one of them said. His translator box turned the clicking sounds into words the humans could understand. "Fragile. One cut and they bleed empty. One breath of vacuum and they die. Why do such weak things travel the stars?" Kept his face calm. He had heard worse from humans. He could hear worse from aliens. The station commander came to inspect them on the second day. His name was Tal, and he was they were beautiful in a strange way. Their bodies were made of living crystal that caught light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. They did not speak with mouths. Instead, they made music with their bodies, sounds that their translators turned into words. Tal walked around the group of humans slowly. His crystalline form chimed and sang as he moved. "Interesting," he said. "A new species. Young. Your star charts say you have only had space travel for 200 years. The Galactic Coalition has existed for 12,000 years. You are like children who have just learned to walk, stumbling into a room full of adults." "We learn fast," said. Tal's body flickered with colors that might have been laughter. "Perhaps we shall see. For now you will stay in the lower levels. You will be given work permits for simple labor, cleaning, maintenance, repairs, nothing important, nothing dangerous. This is the place for species who have not yet proven their worth." His jaw tightened, touched her arm gently. "Not now," the touch said, "not yet." The humans were given small rooms in the station's oldest section. The walls were stained. The air recyclers hummed with age. Other species lived here too, ones that the Coalition considered unimportant. There were here small amphibian creatures with large sad eyes and voices like whispers. They were scholars who had lost their long ago and now survived by keeping records for others. Began his work the next day. He cleaned air filters. He repaired broken pipes. He crawled through maintenance tunnels that the larger aliens could not fit inside. The work was hard but simple, and it gave him time to think. More importantly, it gave him time to learn. He learned the station's layout. Every corridor, every junction, every emergency exit. He counted steps in the darkness and built maps in his mind. He learned the trade languages that different species used to communicate. He learned which guards were lazy and which ones were cruel. He learned where the weapons were stored and how long it took security to respond to alarms. Old habits. A soldier never truly stopped being a soldier. Bay noticed what he was doing. She was young, only 23, an engineer who had been fresh out of training when the endless dawn left Earth. She had bright, curious eyes and a habit of asking too many questions. "You are mapping the station," she said one night, finding in a maintenance tunnel. "You are preparing for something." "I am being careful," said. "There is a difference." "Is there?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed. "My father used to say that peace is a guest that never stays long. You must always be ready for when it leaves." Sat down beside him. "The others think we are safe here. They think the coalition will protect us." "The coalition does not care about us. We are insects to them, useful for crawling into small spaces and fixing things they do not want to touch. If danger comes, they will not protect us. They will protect themselves." "Then why do you stay? Why do any of us stay?" Thought about Earth, the wars, the pollution, the slow death of hope. He thought about his sister who had lost her husband in the last great conflict and had nothing left to go back to. "Because there is nowhere else to go," he said. "So we make this place work. We survive. We wait." Wait for what? He did not answer, but in his heart he knew. He was waiting for the moment when the aliens would finally see that humans were more than insects, more than soft, fragile things to be dismissed and forgotten. That moment would come. It always did. Peace never stayed long. 3 months passed. The humans settled into their new lives. Some found comfort in the routine. Others grew angry at being treated as lesser beings. Threw herself into her medical work, learning everything she could about alien biology. Followed like a shadow, learning his careful ways. Then the reports started coming. The Crimson Veil, a fleet of pirates and outcasts who preyed on the weak edges of coalition space. They had been growing stronger, bolder. They attacked mining stations and cargo ships. They killed without mercy and took without asking. And they were getting closer. Heard the guards talking about it in low, clicking voices. He heard the merchants discussing insurance and escape routes. He saw the fear that rippled through the station like wind through tall grass. He went to Tal with his concerns. "The station's defenses are old," said. "The weapon systems have not been updated in decades. If the Crimson Veil attacks, you will not be able to stop them." Tal's crystal body sang with amusement. "You do not understand war, little human. The Veil are criminals, yes, but they are not foolish. They would never attack a coalition station. The consequences would be too severe. Other fleets would hunt them. They would be destroyed. And if they do not care about consequences, then you worry about things that will never happen. Go back to your cleaning, human. Leave war to those who understand it." Left, but he did not go back to cleaning. That night he gathered, and 3 other humans he trusted. He showed them the maps he had made. He showed them the weaknesses in the station's defenses. He showed them the emergency supply caches and the escape routes and the places where a small group could hide if everything fell apart. "I hope I am wrong," he said. "I hope Tal is right and nothing bad happens. But if I am not wrong, we need to be ready." They listened, they learned, they prepared. And 3 weeks later, the Crimson Veil came. The attack began in the 3rd hour of the station's artificial night, when most beings were sleeping and the corridors were quiet. 7 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel so close to Helix Station that the defense systems had no time to respond. They were black ships with red markings, shaped like blades cutting through the darkness. The Crimson Veil had come. The first explosions tore through the commercial district. Glass shattered. Metal screamed. Beings who had been sleeping peacefully woke to fire and chaos. The second wave of attacks hit the life support systems, and suddenly the air itself became an enemy. Was awake when the alarm started. He had been awake for hours, unable to sleep, feeling something wrong in his bones. When the first explosion shook the station, he was already pulling on his boots. He found in the corridor outside his room. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "It is happening," she said, "just like you said. Find the others. Get to the emergency cache in Section 4. Wait for me there." "Where are you going?" "To find my sister." Worked in the medical bay on Level 6. It was far from the initial attack, but knew that would not last. The Crimson Veil were not stupid. They would target medical facilities to prevent the station from treating its wounded. He ran through corridors filled with screaming beings. A stumbled past him, its crystal body cracked and leaking light like blood. Two guards rushed in the opposite direction, their weapons finally drawn after sitting unused for so long. The station shook again, more explosions, closer now. Reached a junction and stopped. Smoke was pouring from a corridor to his left. Through the smoke he could see flames, real flames, not just sparks. Something had ruptured badly. His communication device crackled. His voice came through, tight with controlled fear. "I am in Sector 7. There was an explosion. The plasma conduits broke open. There is fire everywhere." His heart went cold. Plasma conduits carried superheated energy through the station. When they broke, the fires they created were not like normal fires. They burned at temperatures that could melt metal. They could not be put out with water or foam. They could only be contained or starved of fuel. "Are you safe? Can you get out?" "No, the emergency doors sealed automatically. The fire is in the main corridor. There is no other way out." A pause. "There are over 200 beings trapped here with me. Humans. The station systems have marked us as acceptable losses." Acceptable losses. Had heard those words before in the wars back on Earth. He had always hated them. "I am coming to get you." The fire corridor is 300 meters long. The temperature readings say it is hot enough to melt. No environmental suit can survive that. No species can survive that. Her voice broke slightly. "Brother, you cannot save us. Watch me." He changed direction, running toward Sector 7. The smoke grew thicker. The heat grew stronger. Other beings were running away from where he was going, their eyes wide with terror. They looked at him like he was insane. Maybe he was. He found an old storage room near the entrance to the fire corridor. Inside were maintenance supplies, cleaning chemicals, spare parts. And in the corner, covered in dust, an old environmental suit, human-made. It had come with the Endless Dawn, designed for industrial accidents and emergency repairs on Earth ships. Pulled it out and examined it. The suit was meant to protect against normal fires, chemical spills, and brief exposure to extreme temperatures. It was not meant for plasma fires. It was not meant for anything close to what he was about to do. He put it on anyway. The suit was heavy and awkward. The helmet's visor was scratched and dirty. The oxygen tank was only half full. It did not matter. He sealed the suit and walked toward the fire corridor. The entrance was blocked by an emergency door. A warning screen beside it flashed red symbols and numbers that could not read, but he understood their meaning well enough. Danger, death, do not enter. He found the manual override and forced the door open. The fire corridor stretched before him like the throat of some burning beast. The plasma fire filled it completely, a wall of white and orange and red that moved and roared like a living thing. The heat hit even through his suit, pressing against him with physical force. He thought about turning back. Any sane person would turn back. Then he thought about the 200 beings trapped behind those flames, waiting to die because the coalition had decided they were acceptable losses. He thought about every time in his life someone had told him that something was impossible, and how often they had been wrong. Humans had once lived in caves and died young and feared the dark. Then they learned to make fire, and the fire became their friend instead of their enemy. They built cities. They crossed oceans. They split atoms and cured diseases and reached for the stars. Every time the universe told humans they could not do something, they found a way to do it anyway. This would be no different. Stepped into the fire. The heat was immediate and overwhelming. His suit's external sensors died within seconds. The outer layer of the suit began to burn almost instantly, peeling away like skin from a snake. He could not see anything except orange and white. He could not hear anything except the roar of the flames. But he could count. He had walked this corridor many times during his maintenance work. He knew exactly how many steps it took to cross it. 300 meters, roughly 400 steps at a quick pace. 1, 2, 3, 4. He kept his eyes closed because there was nothing to see. He kept his breathing slow because his oxygen was limited. He kept his mind focused on counting because if he thought about anything else, he would stop. 50 steps. His gloves began to melt. He could feel the heat touching his hands now, burning through the weakening material. 100 steps. The suit's internal temperature climbed past what humans could safely tolerate. His skin began to blister. Pain screamed through his body. 150 steps. Warning alarms shrieked in his helmet. The oxygen was running low. The suit's structural integrity was failing. Every system designed to keep him alive was dying. 200 steps. The outer shell of the suit was gone now. There was nothing between him and the plasma fire except the thin inner layer and his own burning skin. He kept walking. Pain. He had known pain before. In the wars on Earth, he had been shot twice, stabbed once, caught in an explosion that had killed 3 people standing next to him. Pain was not new. Pain was an old friend that visited him in the dark hours of the night. Pain could be ignored. Pain could be pushed aside. Pain was just the body's way of saying that something was wrong, and sometimes the body needed to be told to shut up and keep moving. 250 steps. He stumbled. His legs felt weak. His lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass. 270 steps. He fell. The floor of the corridor was hot enough to burn through what remained of his suit. He felt it searing into his chest, his stomach, his legs. The pain was beyond anything he had ever experienced. He crawled. 280 steps, 290 steps. His hand found something cool, metal, a door. 300 steps. He reached up, found the access panel, slammed his burning hand against it. Something clicked. Something opened. He dragged himself through the doorway and felt the door seal shut behind him. Then he lay on the floor and let the darkness take him. He did not know how long he was unconscious. It might have been seconds or minutes or hours. When he opened his eyes, he saw his face above him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You impossible fool," she whispered. "You walked through plasma fire. You actually walked through plasma fire." Tried to speak. His throat felt like sandpaper. His lips were cracked and bleeding, but he managed 2 words. "The controls." Understood. She helped him stand, which took more effort than anything he had ever done. His body screamed at him to stop, to rest, to give up. He ignored it. The hub's ventilation controls were 20 meters away. It took him 5 minutes to walk that distance, leaning on the whole way. His fingers, some of them barely working anymore, found the emergency override. He rerouted the suppression systems. He vented the fire corridor to space. He opened the sealed doors of Sector 7. Through the speakers he heard cheering. 213 beings saved. Then his body finally gave up, and he collapsed against the control panel, falling into a darkness that felt almost peaceful. The medical bay had never been designed for humans. Its equipment was built for crystal structures and exoskeletons and amphibian biology. When the doctors tried to treat, they found themselves facing a body they did not understand. Refused to leave his side. She had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red and her hands shook from exhaustion, but she kept working. She adapted healing gels for human skin. She modified pain suppressors for human nervous systems. She invented solutions to problems that had never existed before, because no human had ever been burned this badly and survived. and somehow, against every prediction, kept breathing. The burns covered most of his body. His lungs were damaged from inhaling superheated air. His hands were so badly hurt that the doctors said he might never use them properly again. By every medical calculation known to the Coalition, he should have died in that fire corridor. He should have died on the floor of the control hub. He should have died 100 times over in the days that followed. But humans, the alien doctors were learning, did not follow calculations. On the 5th day, opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was sleeping in a chair beside his bed. The second thing he saw was standing by the window, looking out at the stars. The third thing he saw was a warrior standing guard by the door. That last one surprised him. "Why is there a guard?" His voice came out as a rough whisper, speaking hurt, everything hurt. Turned around quickly, her face breaking into a smile. "You are awake. Thank the stars you are awake." She hurried to his side, taking care not to touch his bandaged body. "Wake up, he is awake." Jerked awake instantly, the way doctors learn to do after years of emergency calls. Her tired eyes found his face, and for a moment she just stared at him like she was seeing a ghost. "You should be dead," she said finally. "Sorry to disappoint you." She laughed, but it turned into a sob halfway through. She covered her face with her hands and cried, really cried, in a way had not seen since they were children. He wanted to reach out and comfort her, but his arms would not move properly. So he just lay there and waited until her tears stopped. "The guard," he said again when she had wiped her face. "Why is there a guard at my door?" And exchanged a look. "Things have changed," said slowly. "While you were sleeping, the whole station has been talking about what you did. The commander himself came to see you yesterday. He stood by your bed for an hour just watching you breathe." "Watching me breathe?" "The Believe in Warriors," explained. "Real warriors, not just soldiers who follow orders. They have legends about beings who do impossible things in battle, who refuse to die when death comes for them. They thought those legends were just stories. Then you walked through plasma fire." Tried to process this. His head felt foggy, probably from whatever pain medication they had given him. "The 200 beings I saved, are they all right?" 213 said, "All alive, all safe. The Crimson Veil attack was pushed back. 7 enemy ships destroyed, the rest retreating. The station survived." "Good." He closed his eyes for a moment. "That is good." His voice was serious now. "You need to understand something. What you did was impossible. The RAND calculations. The RAND calculations. The checked every historical record they have. No being in the history of the Coalition has ever survived walking through 300 meters of plasma fire. The temperatures alone should have killed you in the first 10 meters. But you walked through all of it, opened the doors, saved everyone, and you are still alive." "I am stubborn." "You are something," agreed. "But stubborn does not cover it. The aliens are calling you something else now. They are calling you a word in the language. I do not know how to pronounce it properly, but it translates roughly to one who defies death." More days passed. Healed slowly, much more slowly than he would have liked. The burns on his body faded from angry red to pink to pale scars that would never fully disappear. His hands recovered enough to move, though they ached constantly and probably always would. But his mind healed faster than his body. He spent hours thinking about what had happened, trying to understand it. He had walked through fire that should have killed him. He had kept walking when every part of his body screamed at him to stop. Why? How? He did not know. He was not sure he wanted to know. The visits started on the 2nd week of his recovery. The first visitor was a scholar named, a small creature with silver-green skin and eyes like deep pools of water. Brought recording equipment and sat by his bed with barely contained excitement. "I am a historian," explained in a soft, whispering voice. "I record events of significance for the Coalition archives. What you did is significant. May I ask you questions?" Shrugged, which hurt. "Ask." When you entered the fire corridor, what were you thinking? Were you afraid? Considered the question. Yes, I was afraid, but my sister was on the other side of that fire. 200 other beings were on the other side. Fear did not matter. But you knew you would probably die. Probably is not definitely. Humans learn early that probably is not definitely. Made a note with a small device. Among most coalition species, self-preservation is the strongest instinct. A warrior will fight to the death for honor, yes, but they expect to win. They do not walk into certain death for strangers. They calculate odds and act accordingly. You calculated the odds and ignored them. Why? Thought about his childhood on Earth. The stories his grandmother used to tell him about the old days, when Korea was divided and people risked death to cross borders for family. The history lessons about humans who jumped on grenades to save their friends, who ran into burning buildings for people they had never met, who faced impossible odds again and somehow kept going. Humans evolved on a death world, he said finally. Everything on our planet tries to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the smallest creatures can be deadly. We survived because we learned to fight against impossible odds. We learned that giving up means dying. We learned that the only way forward is through. Stared at him with those deep, watery eyes. You are saying that humans are insane by coalition standards. Smiled, which cracked the healing skin on his lips. I am saying that humans do not know how to quit. We never learned. More visitors came. A merchant who wanted to shake his hand and ended up crying tears of liquid light when he saw us bandaged fingers. A group of young warriors who stood silently by his bed, studying him like he was a puzzle they needed to solve. Even Tao, the station commander who had dismissed human concerns about the attack, came to visit. Tao's crystal body sang with soft, somber tones. I was wrong about your species, the commander said. I saw soft flesh and assumed weakness. I saw short and assumed insignificance. I did not understand that softness can hide strength and that short lives can burn brighter than long ones. We are still learning too, said. About you, about this coalition, about what we can become out here among the stars. What you can become, Tal repeated. Yes, I think the coalition will be watching to see exactly what that is. The commander left, but his words stayed with, rolling around in his mind like stones in a river. What could humans become? He did not know, but he was beginning to understand that the answer mattered, not just for him, not just for the 47 humans on this station, but for all of humanity still so young among the ancient civilizations of the galaxy. He had walked through fire. Now he needed to figure out what came next. The message came on a morning 3 weeks after the attack, was finally able to walk short distances, though his body complained with every step. He was practicing in the corridor outside his medical room when a young warrior approached him. You are summoned, the warrior said, clicking the words through his translator. To the central chamber, the elders wish to speak with you. Looked down at himself. He was wearing simple medical clothes, loose and soft to avoid irritating his healing skin. His hair was unwashed. His face still bore marks of his burns. I am not exactly dressed for a formal meeting. The warrior made a sound that might have been laughter. You walk through plasma fire in a maintenance suit. I do not think anyone expects you to care about formal dress. Insisted on coming with him. So did. The 3 humans made their way slowly through the station, drawing stares from every species they passed. Word had spread far and wide about what had done. He could see it in the way the aliens looked at him now, not with dismissal or contempt, with something closer to wonder. The central chamber was the largest open space on Helix Station. It could hold thousands of beings at once, and today it seemed like thousands had come. Stopped at the entrance, overwhelmed by the crowd. Warriors lined the walls, standing at attention with their weapons held across their chests. Merchants clustered in groups, their crystal bodies throwing rainbows across the floor. Scholars huddled together, whispering in their soft voices, and scattered throughout the crowd could see the other humans from the endless dawn, their faces showing the same confusion he felt. "What is happening?" whispered. A deep voice answered from behind them, a Naming. They turned to find standing there. He was the eldest on the station, a massive creature whose black shell had faded to gray with age. His eyes, dozens of them, studied with an intensity that made the human feel very small. "Among my people," continued, "there is an old tradition. When a warrior performs an act so extraordinary that it goes beyond normal honor, they are given a name, a title that follows them across all worlds and is recognized by all species. This tradition has not been invoked in over 2,000 years. We had begun to think that such warriors no longer existed." Swallowed hard. "I am not a warrior, I am an engineer." A warrior is not defined by their training. A warrior is defined by their actions. You walked through fire that would have killed any of us. You ignored certain death to save beings who were strangers to you. You did what the greatest champions of legend did, and you did it in a body made of soft flesh and breakable bones. Leaned closer. If you are not a warrior, then the word has no meaning. Before could respond, turned and walked toward the center of the chamber. The crowd parted before him like water before a great ship. After a moment, followed, with enclosed behind. The center of the chamber had been cleared to form a circular space. Took his place at the edge of this circle and was guided to stand in the middle. He felt exposed, like an insect under a magnifying glass. Every eye in the chamber was on him. Raised one massive clawed hand, and the room fell silent. "We gather today to witness a Naming," the old announced, his voice booming through the chamber. "This human of Earth has earned this honor through an act of impossible courage. 23 days ago, when the Crimson Veil attacked our station, he walked through 300 meters of plasma fire to save 213 beings. The calculations say he should have died. The science says he should have died. Every law of biology and physics says he should have died. But he did not die. He walked through death itself and emerged on the other side, carrying life with him." The crowd stirred, could hear whispers in a dozen languages, translations buzzing through countless devices. Continued, "I have lived for 300 years. I have seen warriors of every species in this coalition. I have seen champions who could tear through enemy lines alone. I have seen who sang armies into confusion. I have seen courage in many forms, but I have never seen anything like what this human did. And so, by the ancient right of witnessed valor, I invoke the Naming." He stepped into the circle and stood before. Despite his injuries, despite his human frailty, forced himself to stand straight and meet this many eyes. "Of Earth," said, his voice now soft enough that only those nearby could hear. "You came to us as a stranger. You came to us as a member of a species we dismissed as weak and unimportant. You showed us how wrong we were. You showed us that strength is not about size or armor or weapons. Strength is about the fire inside, and your fire burns brighter than any I have ever seen." He placed his massive clawed hand on shoulder. The weight was enormous, but did not buckle under it. "By the old laws, by the right of witnessed valor, I name you before the coalition and all its worlds." His voice rose again, filling the chamber. "You are no longer simply of Earth. From this day forward, you are Grimvex." The name hung in the air like a physical thing. "In your language," said, "this means shadow of battle, for you move through destruction as a shadow moves through light. Where battle rages, where fire burns, where death waits, you pass through untouched by laws that bind lesser beings. This is the highest honor the can bestow. This is a name that will be remembered long after all of us are gone." Silence held the chamber. Then, slowly, stepped back, and he did something that made his breath catch in his throat. The old bowed. It was not a small bow, not a nod of the head or a slight inclination of the body. It was a full bow, deep and respectful, the kind that warriors gave only to those they considered their absolute equals or superiors. For a moment nothing happened, then another bowed, then another, then all of them, every warrior in the chamber dropping into the same deep bow. They were next. Their crystal bodies dimmed their light, a sign of respect among their kind. They lowered their crests. Species after species showed their honor in their own ways, until the entire chamber was bent in recognition of one small human standing in the center. Felt tears forming in his eyes. He blinked them back, but he could not stop the emotion that swelled in his chest. "I did not do this for honor," he said, his voice carrying through the sudden silence. "I did it because people needed help, because my sister needed help, because 200 beings were going to die and I could not accept that. That is what humans do. We help. We survive. We refuse to accept that death is the end of the story. We refuse to accept that anything is impossible." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings from a dozen different species. "I am just one human. We are just 47 humans on this station, but we are the beginning of something. We are the first. And if you remember nothing else about us, remember this. When fire came, we walked through it. When death came, we faced it. And when the universe told us we could not do something, we did it anyway." He paused, letting the words sink in. "That is what it means to be human. And if you give us a chance, we will show you just how bright our fire can burn." The silence lasted for 3 heartbeats, then straightened from his bow, raised his head and spoke. "Shadow of Battle has spoken. Let his words be recorded. Let them be remembered. Let the coalition know that humanity has arrived among us and nothing will ever be the same." The chamber erupted in sound. Cheering, clicking, singing, whispers. Every species making noise in their own way, united in acknowledgement of what had just happened. Stood in the center of it all, the name Grimvex settling onto his shoulders like a cloak, and wondered what the future would bring. 1 year passed since the nomming ceremony. 1 year since a human stood in the central chamber of Helix Station and told the coalition what it meant to be from Earth. In that year, everything changed. Did not become an ambassador or a politician or a symbol. He went back to work. His hands still ached from the burns, and they probably always would. But they could still hold tools, still repair machines, still build things that mattered. He led engineering teams now instead of working alone. Humans and aliens worked side by side under his guidance, and slowly, carefully, he helped redesign the station's defensive systems. "You could be more," told him one evening, sitting in his small quarters and watching the stars through the viewport. "You could speak at coalition councils. You could influence policy. You could change how they see all humans." Smiled. The expression pulled at the scars on his face, but he had grown used to that. "I already did change how they see us. Now it is time for others to show them what we can do. I am just an engineer who got lucky." Lucky shook her head. "You walked through plasma fire." "And I survived. That was the lucky part." He looked at his hands. The rest was just stubbornness. He was right about one thing. Others were stepping forward now. Park was a who had come to space because Earth's universities had rejected her research as too radical. On Helix Station, she found a plague that had been killing scholars for centuries. The alien doctors had studied it for generations and found no cure. Solved it in 6 months, combining human medical knowledge with biology in ways no one had tried before. They called her Life Bringer and offered her a position of honor in their diminished society. Was a pilot who had flown cargo ships back on Earth. Among the coalition, he flew rescue missions into places that other species refused to enter. Unstable wormholes, collapsing asteroid fields, radiation storms that would kill most beings in minutes. Flew through them all, bringing back survivors who had been given up for dead. The merchants composed songs about him, and his name became a symbol of hope for those lost in the dangerous edges of space. Lee was a diplomat barely 25 years old. She had been a translator on the Endless Dawn, one of the youngest crew members. Now she sat in trade negotiations with arguing for human rights and human dignity with a fire in her eyes that reminded many of the Shadow of Battle himself. She secured the first equal trade agreement between humans and the Coalition, a document that would shape human commerce for generations. And Myra was a soldier. She had served in the wars on Earth just like. She had seen friends die and cities burn. She had come to space hopping to leave violence behind. But when they offered to integrate humans into their defense forces, she was the first to volunteer. "The universe is not safe," she explained when asked her why. "It has never been safe. Pretending otherwise just means being unprepared when danger comes. At least this way I can protect people." They trained her. They expected her to fail. Humans were soft after all, fragile. They could not possibly match the strength and endurance of species bred for war. They were wrong. Myra could not match in single combat, but she could outthink them. She could find solutions they never considered. She could keep fighting long after her body should have given up, drawing on some reserve of will that they could not explain or measure. "It is the same thing we saw in Shadow of Battle," one trainer reported. "They do not know when to stop. Their bodies fail and they keep moving. Their minds say surrender and they refuse. It is as if they are broken in some way, but broken in a direction that makes them stronger." Within 8 months, Myra commanded a mixed battalion of humans and, within 10 months, they were tested in real combat. The Crimson Veil had regrouped. They attacked a coalition core world, expecting easy victory. The planet's defenses were old and its garrison was small. It should have fallen in hours. It did not fall. Myra's battalion held a mountain pass that military analysts had deemed impossible to defend. The terrain was too exposed. The enemy numbers were too great. The supply lines were too long. Every calculation said the position would collapse within the first hour. The battle lasted 6 hours. Myra's forces took heavy casualties, but they held. They held when the first wave came. They held when the second wave came. They held when the enemy commander threw everything he had at them, convinced that the stubborn defenders would finally break. They did not break. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found Myra standing at the front of her remaining troops, covered in blood and dirt, her weapon empty but her eyes still burning with defiance. The Crimson Veil forces were retreating, their attack shattered against human stubbornness. "How did you do it?" a general asked her later. Myra shrugged. "We had a good example to follow. Shadow of Battle showed us what humans can do when we stop accepting what is supposed to be impossible." The story spread. It joined the growing legend of human determination, human courage, human refusal to accept defeat. The scholars coined a new term for it, Vex. Roughly translated, it meant the fire that refuses to die. They used it to describe humanity as a whole, a species that should have been dismissed as soft and weak and insignificant, but instead burned with a flame that nothing could extinguish. Heard about Myra's victory while he was calibrating a new defense grid. He smiled, set down his tools and looked out at the stars. "You see," he said quietly to no one in particular, "this is what we are. This is what we have always been. We just needed the chance to show it." The chance was growing larger every day. More human ships arrived at coalition stations. More humans stepped forward to prove themselves. Scientists and soldiers, doctors and diplomats, engineers and artists. Each one adding to the story. Each one showing the galaxy that humanity belonged among the stars. Not because they were the strongest. Not because they were special in any way that could be measured or calculated. Because they refused to give up. Because when fire came, they walked through it. In the records of Helix Station, carved into the wall of the central chamber, there was now an inscription. They had written it in their beautiful flowing script, and translators rendered it in every coalition language. It read, "In the darkness between stars they found us fragile. In the fire of battle they found us unbreakable. We are human. We walk through fire, and we do not walk alone." Visited that inscription sometimes, late in the artificial night when the corridors were quiet. He would trace the words with his fingers and remember the fire that had nearly killed him, the fire that had changed everything. He had come to space looking for peace. Instead, he had found something better. He had found proof that humanity had a place among the ancient civilizations of the galaxy, not as servants or curiosities or acceptable losses, as equals, as partners, as beings worthy of respect. The shadow of battle had cast a long shadow indeed. But the true legacy was not his alone. It belonged to every human who came after him, every person who refused to accept impossible odds, every stubborn soul who looked at the universe and said, "No, I will not surrender." That was the human way. That would always be the human way. And the galaxy, whether it liked it or not, would simply have to get used to it.